Hello there, and welcome to Midnight Geography. Tonight we'll drift into the beautiful illogic of our planet's surface. Geography is the art of making sense of Earth's contradictions, where rivers flow uphill, deserts bloom with fish, and nations exist within other nations. It's the study of a world that refuses to follow its own rules, where proximity means nothing and distance everything. Our planet arranges itself in patterns that defy common sense, yet persist with stubborn reality. If you enjoy these peaceful geographical explorations, consider liking and subscribing. It helps other curious minds find their way here too. But for now, let's begin. The Caspian Sea spreads across the heart of Eurasia like a vast contradiction, carrying the name of an ocean while being nothing more than a lake, though calling it nothing more seems unfair to the world's largest enclosed body of water. Between Europe and Asia, this ancient basin holds more water than all the North American Great Lakes would if you poured them together into a single vessel. No rivers flow from it to any ocean, no tides connect it to distant moons. It simply exists, sealed away from the world's waters, yet we insist on calling it a sea. The sturgeon swimming through its brackish depths don't care about our naming conventions. They glide through waters that have been isolated here since the continents themselves were young, when what we now call the Mediterranean reached much further east. Perhaps the Caspian earned its maritime title through sheer persistence, through being so vast that early travelers couldn't imagine it as anything less than a sea. This brings us to consider Point Roberts, Washington, a small American town that forgot to be attached to America. Here, children ride school buses through British Columbia for 40 minutes each way, crossing international borders twice daily, just to reach their classrooms in their own country. The peculiarity arose from a treaty signed in 1846, when diplomats drawing lines on maps decided the 49th parallel would divide nations, not imagining they were stranding a tiny peninsula of American soil beyond Canada's embrace. The residents of Point Roberts have learned to live with this geographic absurdity. Their groceries come through Canada, their mail goes through Canada. Emergency medical services require international cooperation, yet they remain steadfastly American, a 5-square-mile reminder that borders drawn in distant rooms rarely make sense on the ground where people actually live. Lesotho sits entirely within South Africa like a kingdom that missed its chance to touch the ocean. Completely surrounded, entirely enveloped, it exists as one of only 3 nations on Earth to find itself locked within another country's embrace. The Basotho people who call it home live their entire lives at elevations where most visitors struggle to breathe. The lowest point in the country sits higher than most nations' mountains. This mountain kingdom preserves its independence through altitude and determination. A sovereign state that proves geography doesn't always follow political logic. The country exports water to South Africa, sending rivers down from its heights to the nation that surrounds it, as if the land itself insists on maintaining connections despite the complete encirclement. Between Jordan and Israel, the Dead Sea continues its ancient disappearing act, dropping lower each year, as if trying to escape into the earth itself. Already holding the record as the lowest point on dry land, it seems unsatisfied with this achievement and continues descending, losing over 1 meter of depth annually. The water that remains grows ever saltier, already so dense that human bodies bob like corks on its surface. No fish swim here, hence its morbid name, yet the minerals suspended in its waters have drawn visitors for millennia. Cleopatra allegedly demanded exclusive rights to its therapeutic muds. Today, hotels perch on shores that retreat further each year, their beach chairs chasing an increasingly distant waterline. The Jordan River, which once roared into this basin, now arrives as barely a trickle, diverted for agriculture long before it reaches this terminal lake. Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador plays a clever geometric trick on those who worship height. While Everest claims fame for its altitude above sea level, Chimborazo's summit actually sits farther from Earth's center than any other point on the planet's surface. Our planet, you see, is not a perfect sphere, but bulges at the equator like a spinning ball of clay. Chimborazo takes advantage of this bulge, its peak riding that equatorial swell into space. The mountain's summit reaches over 2 kilometers farther from Earth's core than Everest's lofty crown. Indigenous peoples have long considered this extinct volcano sacred, perhaps intuiting what modern measurements would eventually prove, that this is where Earth reaches closest to the stars. Climbers who summit Chimborazo stand on the point of our planet that extends farthest into the cosmos, even if the air feels thicker than it would on Everest's more celebrated peak. In the depths of a Norwegian valley, the town of Rjukan found an ingenious solution to 6 months of darkness. Giant mirrors now perch on the mountainside, computer-controlled heliostats that track the sun's movement and reflect its rays down into the town square. For half the year, the valley's steep walls block all direct sunlight, leaving residents in a perpetual twilight. The mirrors, each the size of a small building, catch the sun's rays from high above and redirect them downward, creating an island of light in the shadowed valley. Children play in this reflected sunshine. Coffee drinkers bask in borrowed rays, and the town square becomes a gathering place for light-starved residents. Before the mirrors arrived in 2013, those who could afford it would take a cable car up the mountainside just to feel direct sunlight on their faces. Now the sun comes to them, bounced off polished steel, a daily reminder that humans refuse to accept geography's limitations. The Sahara Desert, that vast ocean of sand we imagine as endlessly hot and dry, regularly receives snow on its mountain peaks. In Algeria's Hoggar Mountains, temperatures plummet below freezing on winter nights, and white powder dusts the red rocks. This seems to offend our sense of what deserts should be, yet the Sahara has always been more complex than our simple images suggest. These mountains rise from the sand like islands, their peaks catching moisture that the lower desert never sees. Prehistoric rock art in these highlands shows elephants, giraffes, and humans swimming, remnants from when the Sahara was green and rivers flowed where now only sand rivers run. The snow that falls here rarely lasts more than a day, melting into rocks that haven't seen persistent water for thousands of years. Vatican City comprises the world's smallest nation, a country you could walk across during a coffee break. Within its walls, and it does have walls, medieval fortifications that now serve more as tourist paths than defensive structures, exists an entire sovereign state. It prints its own euros, bearing the Pope's image instead of European monuments. The Vatican Postal Service, renowned for its reliability, handles millions of letters annually, despite serving only a few hundred residents. This nation within Rome maintains diplomatic relations with 183 countries, making it one of the most internationally connected pieces of land per square meter on Earth. The Vatican even fields athletic teams, though finding enough citizens to form a football squad requires recruiting Swiss guards and museum workers. Every morning, residents of Rome walk through Vatican City on their way to work, casually commuting through a sovereign nation as if it were just another neighborhood. Lake Baikal in Siberia holds superlatives the way other lakes hold water, abundantly and seemingly without limit. This single rift valley contains 1/5 of all Earth's fresh surface water, a repository so vast that if it were emptied, it would take all the world's rivers a full year to refill it. The lake stretches so deep that tectonic plates are actively pulling apart beneath it, gradually widening this gash in Asia's heart. In winter, the lake freezes with such clarity that you can see perfectly through meters of ice, watching fish swim beneath your feet as if through glass. The Baikal seal, found nowhere else on Earth, evolved here in isolation, the only freshwater seal species on the planet. How their ancestors reached this inland sea, thousands of kilometers from any ocean, remains one of biology's enduring mysteries. Iceland grows wider each year, pulling apart at its seams like a wool sweater slowly unraveling. 5 centimeters annually might seem insignificant, but this is continental drift made visible, the North American and Eurasian plates conducting their ancient divorce right through the middle of an inhabited country. You can walk between continents in Thingvellir National Park, placing one foot in North America and the other in Europe, standing in the gap that widens with each passing year. The island itself exists only because of this spreading, volcanic activity along the ridge building land faster than the Atlantic can erode it away. Icelanders have learned to live with this geological restlessness, building their homes on land that might not have existed when their grandparents were born. Hot springs bubble up through the rifts, and the entire island serves as a reminder that Earth's surface is far more temporary than we like to imagine. In a million years, Iceland may have torn itself into 2 separate islands, each drifting away from the other, like ships leaving port. Lake Hillier on Middle Island off Australia's coast maintains its bubblegum pink color with such persistence that even water removed and placed in a glass remains pink. This isn't a trick of light or reflection, but the actual color of the water itself, tinted by salt-loving algae and bacteria that thrive in the lake's extreme salinity. From above, it looks like someone has painted a pink oval on the landscape, bordered by white sand and dark green eucalyptus forest. The color persists through all seasons, never fading, never changing, as if the lake has decided pink is simply what it shall be. Scientists have identified the organisms responsible, but something about the lake's unwavering pinkness feels almost defiant, as though it refuses to be anything as ordinary as blue or green. Swimmers who enter its waters, and you can swim here safely, emerge with skin crystallized in salt, but otherwise unharmed, having bathed in what looks like liquefied rose quartz. Damascus and Jericho both claim the title of world's oldest continuously inhabited city, their foundations reaching back through 11,000 years of human memory. These cities were already ancient when the pyramids were built, already weathered when Rome was founded. In their streets, you walk on layers upon layers of human history, each century adding its sediment to the pile. Damascus has seen empires rise and fall like seasonal floods, yet someone has always called it home. Jericho's walls, made famous by biblical trumpets, were rebuilt and destroyed dozens of times, yet people never abandoned the site. These cities persist not through any geographic advantage, but through sheer human stubbornness, through generation after generation, deciding that this place, this exact spot, is home. The modern buildings stand on the compressed dreams of thousands of years of ancestors, each layer of rubble becoming the foundation for what comes next. The Amazon River flows for thousands of kilometers through Brazil without a single bridge spanning its main channel. This seems impossible for the world's largest river by volume, carrying more water than the next 7 largest rivers combined, yet no bridge connects its banks, along its entire Brazilian journey. The river is too wide in most places, too prone to flooding, its banks too sparsely populated to justify the enormous expense. Ferries carry cars and people across waters that can stretch 30 kilometers wide during flood season. The absence of bridges has preserved something essential about the Amazon. It remains a barrier, a divider, a force that humans must respect rather than casually overcome. The few cities along its banks exist as islands of civilization, connected more easily by boat than by road, maintaining a relationship with the river that echoes centuries-old patterns of life. Nauru, a tiny island nation in the Pacific, once possessed the world's highest per capita income from the most unlikely source: fossilized bird droppings. For millions of years, seabirds roosted on this small coral atoll, and their guano, compressed and mineralized into phosphate rock, became one of the world's richest fertilizer deposits. The entire center of the island was excavated, leaving behind a moonscape of coral pinnacles, while a thin strip of habitable land clings to the coast. The phosphate is nearly gone now, the wealth evaporated, and Nauru stands as a cautionary tale written in limestone and bird droppings. What remains is a nation hollowed out, literally and figuratively, its interior uninhabitable, its people confined to the edges of what was once their island. The birds still come, adding their contributions to the depleted landscape, but it will take geological time to restore what a century of mining removed. The Sargasso Sea exists without shores, defined not by land, but by the circular currents of the North Atlantic Gyre. Within this boundary of moving water lies a sea within the ocean, characterized by its floating sargassum seaweed and eerily calm waters. Ships throughout history have reported being becalmed here for weeks, trapped in waters that barely move while the rest of the ocean swirls around them. European eels, born in rivers thousands of kilometers away, somehow navigate to this exact spot to spawn and die, their larvae drifting back to the same rivers their parents left. The sea maintains its boundaries through physics rather than geography, a reminder that not all borders require land. Columbus sailed through it, noting the thick seaweed that his sailors feared would entangle their ships. Today, it accumulates not just seaweed, but the Atlantic's plastic waste, trapped by the same currents that define its existence. Alaska achieves a geographic triple crown that seems mathematically impossible. It is simultaneously America's northernmost, westernmost, and easternmost state. The trick lies in the Aleutian Islands, which stretch so far west they cross the 180th meridian into the eastern hemisphere. By the strict definitions of longitude, some of Alaska's islands are farther east than Maine. This technicality delights geographic pedants and confuses everyone else, but it illustrates how arbitrary our human impositions on Earth's surface can be. The state spans such distances that sunrise in one part occurs while another experiences sunset. Wildlife migrates across the international date line without losing a day, while humans must adjust their watches and calendars. Alaska's geographic extremes make it a place where conventional understanding breaks down, where you can travel west to go east, where tomorrow and yesterday exist simultaneously on different islands. Mont Blanc's summit migrates northeast at a pace you could measure with a ruler, if you were patient enough to stand on a glacier with a ruler for a year. The mountain's peak, shared uneasily between France and Italy, refuses to stay still, carried along by the ice that crowns it. This movement requires the two nations to periodically renegotiate their border. Diplomatic meetings called because a mountain won't remain where the maps say it should. The summit's wandering seems almost willful, as if the mountain itself rejects the human need to draw fixed lines on shifting ice. Climate change accelerates this movement as glaciers flow faster, making the border even more theoretical. Somewhere in offices in Paris and Rome, bureaucrats track the mountain's location, updating documents to reflect where nature has moved their boundary this year. Singapore grows larger through sheer determination, importing sand from neighboring countries to expand its territory. The island nation has increased its land area by a quarter since independence, adding parks, airports, and entire neighborhoods where once there was only ocean. This hunger for sand has become so voracious that several countries have banned sand exports to Singapore, treating beach sand as a strategic resource. The irony of buying land grain by grain, ship by ship, transforms Singapore into a nation that is literally constructed from its neighbors. The original coastline has long since disappeared under layers of imported earth, the old beaches buried beneath new streets. Future archaeologists will find a geological layer that tells the story of a country that refused to accept the size geography gave it, building itself larger one barge of sand at a time. The Great Blue Hole off Belize's coast forms a perfect circle of deep blue in the lighter turquoise of the surrounding Caribbean, as if Earth decided to install a drain in the ocean floor. This submarine sinkhole plunges straight down into darkness, its walls decorated with ancient stalactites that formed when this was a cave above sea level. Divers descending into the hole pass through layers of geological time, each meter down representing thousands of years of Earth's history. At certain depths, the water stratifies so distinctly that it looks like swimming through layers of different liquids. The circle is so geometrically perfect, it seems artificial from above, a dark blue eye staring up from the seafloor. Jacques Cousteau declared it one of the world's best diving sites, though most of the hole remains unexplored, too deep and dangerous for all but the most technical divers. Norway's coastline performs a geometric magic trick that would make mathematicians weep with joy. If you were to stretch it into a straight line, including every fjord, inlet, and island shore, it would wrap around the equator more than twice. This seems impossible for a country that appears modestly sized on maps, but coastlines exist in a fractal dimension where the closer you look, the more detail you find. Each fjord branches into smaller inlets. Each bay contains smaller coves. Each seemingly straight stretch reveals new curves upon inspection. The Vikings who navigated these waters knew every hidden harbor, every protected inlet where longships could shelter from North Atlantic storms. The complexity of this coast has shaped Norwegian culture for millennia, creating a people as comfortable on water as land, where the shortest distance between 2 points is rarely a straight line, but rather a journey through nature's own labyrinth. Ciudad Juarez and El Paso form one metropolitan area artificially bisected by the Rio Grande, a single city pretending to be two for political convenience. Residents can see into each other's countries from their windows, watch the same storms build over the same mountains, breathe the same desert air. The river that divides them is usually little more than a concrete channel, often nearly dry, hardly the mighty boundary it appears as on maps. Families spread across both sides, some members waking in Mexico, others in the United States, gathering for dinner wherever bureaucracy allows. The border fence runs through what should be downtown, turning a natural urban center into an edge. At night, the lights of both cities blend into one constellation, electricity ignoring the international boundary that constrains the movement of the people who pay for it. The Rishat structure in Mauritania stares up from the Sahara like an enormous eye, visible to astronauts as a bullseye in the vast tan expanse of the desert. Once thought to be an impact crater, geologists now believe it formed through geological uplift and erosion, though its perfect concentric circles still seem too regular for nature's usually chaotic hand. The structure spans 40 kilometers across, large enough that you cannot see its circular nature from the ground. Only from space does the pattern become clear. Some have proposed it as the location of Atlantis, though the structure has never been near an ocean. The rings are formed by different types of rock eroding at different rates, creating ridges and valleys in perfect circles. From orbit, it serves as a landmark for space travelers, one of the most recognizable features on the African continent, a target that Earth seems to have painted on itself. Poland's Crooked Forest contains 400 pine trees that all decided to grow with the same peculiar bend, each trunk curving 90 degrees at the base before straightening skyward. Planted around 1930, these trees share their deformity with suspicious uniformity, all bent in the same direction, all at the same height, all at the same angle. No one knows for certain what caused this synchronized deviation. Some suggest farmers deliberately shaped them for shipbuilding, though the technique is lost. Others propose tanks rolled through during World War II, though that doesn't explain the uniformity. The trees grow in a small corner of forest near the German border, surrounded by perfectly straight pines, as if whatever influenced them respected very specific boundaries. They stand as a living mystery, a geometric puzzle written in wood and time. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela hosts Earth's most reliable lightning show, with strikes occurring up to 280 times per hour on busy nights. This nearly permanent thunderstorm has raged for thousands of years, mentioned in indigenous legends and colonial chronicles. The phenomenon occurs where the lake meets the Catatumbo River, warm Caribbean air colliding with cool Andean winds in perfect conditions for electrical generation. Ships once navigated by this lightning, using it as a lighthouse that nature maintained free of charge. The strikes are so frequent that the lake produces more atmospheric ozone than any other single location on Earth. Local people have lived with this constant strobing for generations, children growing up with lightning as a nightly companion, learning to sleep through the thunder that would keep visitors awake. The lightning takes occasional breaks, disappearing for weeks or months before returning with renewed vigor, as if it needs to rest from its own intensity. The Korean DMZ, one of the world's most dangerous borders, has accidentally become a pristine nature preserve. For 70 years, the absence of humans has allowed wildlife to flourish in the 4-kilometer-wide strip between North and South Korea. Endangered red-crowned cranes nest in the wetlands. Asiatic black bears, extinct elsewhere on the peninsula, wander through forests that have grown without logging or development. Tigers might have returned, though no one can confirm this, since entering the zone to check would likely trigger a war. Landmines and military tensions have created what conservation efforts could not: a perfect wildlife sanctuary. The irony is profound. The most militarized border on Earth has become a haven for peace-loving creatures. When Korea eventually reunifies, decisions will have to be made about this accident of preservation, this garden that grew from the seeds of human conflict. Australia stretches wider than the moon, a fact that seems designed specifically to break our sense of scale. From Perth to Sydney, the continental width exceeds our satellite's diameter, making Australia larger than the celestial body that controls our tides. This comparison illuminates both the moon's surprising smallness and Australia's continental vastness. The moon, which looms so large in our sky and imagination, could fit comfortably between Australia's coasts with room to spare. Perhaps this explains something essential about Australian geography. The seemingly endless interior, the hours of flying over red nothing, the way the country seems to exist on a different scale from European nations. When full moon rises over the outback, Australians can look up knowing their country would dwarf that silver disk if placed side by side. The Principality of Sealand stands on rusted legs in the North Sea, a World War II gun platform that declared independence and has maintained its claimed sovereignty for over 50 years. This micronation, smaller than a football field, sits 12 kilometers off England's coast, just outside what were territorial waters when it was founded. The Bates family has occupied it continuously since 1967, issuing passports, minting coins, and even withstanding an attempted coup. During a hostage crisis in 1978, Germany sent a diplomat to negotiate, which Sealand interprets as de facto recognition. The platform has its own constitution, national anthem, and football team. Internet entrepreneurs once tried to buy it to create a data haven, free from national laws. Britain tolerates this nautical neighbor with bemused indifference, neither recognizing nor challenging its existence. Sealand endures in its gray zone, neither fully real nor entirely imaginary, a nation built on legal technicalities and military surplus. Lake Vostok lies beneath 4 kilometers of Antarctic ice, sealed away from Earth's surface for 15 million years. This vast body of water, liquid despite being in the coldest place on Earth, exists in total darkness under pressure that would crush most life as we know it. Yet scientists believe it might harbor organisms that have evolved in isolation since before humans existed, before most current species emerged. The lake stays liquid through a combination of geothermal heat from below and insulation from the ice above, creating an alien environment on our own planet. Russian scientists drilled through the ice to reach it, taking extraordinary precautions not to contaminate this time capsule of evolution. What they found suggested life indeed exists in this impossible place, though what kind of life remains largely mysterious. Vostok represents Earth's last frontiers, places so isolated that they might as well exist on another planet. Detroit sits at such an angle to the Canadian border that traveling due south from downtown takes you directly to Windsor, Ontario. This geographic quirk makes Detroit the only major American city where you look south to see Canada, disrupting the mental maps of anyone who assumes Canada is always north. The Detroit River bends at just the right angle to create this oddity, making sunset. Views from Windsor include the Detroit skyline against the southern sky. This reversal of expected directions has practical implications. Canadians commute north to work in America. Americans drive south for Canadian healthcare. The Ambassador Bridge connects the two cities in a curve that starts northwest and ends southeast, though everyone thinks of it as running north-south. Even weather patterns get confused here, with storms that should head north to Canada actually moving south, adding meteorological confusion to geographic disorientation. The Mobile Cave in Romania has been sealed from the surface world for 5.5 million years, creating an ecosystem so alien it might as well exist on another planet. In this absolute darkness, 48 species have evolved, 33 found nowhere else on Earth, living in an atmosphere poisonous to most surface life. The cave breathes methane and hydrogen sulfide, gases that bacteria convert to food, supporting an entire food web that has never known sunlight. Blind spiders hunt blind insects along the cave walls. Transparent worms swim through underground pools that have never reflected sky. Water scorpions lost their eyes millions of years ago, navigating by touch through galleries no human entered until 1986. The creatures here descended from ancestors trapped when limestone sealed the cave during the Messinian salinity crisis, when the Mediterranean dried up. Evolution continued in this bottle, taking familiar forms and twisting them into something unrecognizable. The cave air would kill humans in minutes without breathing apparatus, yet life thrives here in abundance, proof that existence finds ways to persist in the most impossible places. Tristan da Cunha rises from the South Atlantic like Earth's final punctuation mark, the most remote inhabited archipelago on the planet. The nearest humans live on St. Helena, over 2,000 kilometers away across open ocean, while South Africa, the nearest continent, lies nearly 3,000 kilometers distant. The island's 245 residents all share just 7 family names, descendants of the original settlers who arrived in the 1800s. Mail arrives by ship perhaps 8 times a year, weather permitting. The island has 1 road, 1 hospital, 1 school, and when the volcano erupted in 1961, the entire population evacuated to England, though most returned 2 years later, homesick for their isolation. Internet arrived in 2006, connecting the loneliest people on Earth to everyone else, though many residents say this changed their island more than the volcano ever did. The surrounding waters are so rough that ships can only dock on 60 days per year, yet people choose to live here, raising children who grow up knowing every face on their island, in a community so small that everyone is essential. The Philippines transforms with the tides, possessing more than 500 islands that exist only part-time. At low tide, the nation consists of over 7,600 islands, but high tide drowns 534 of them, erasing them from the map twice daily. These vanishing islands support no permanent inhabitants, but host temporary fishing camps where people race the tides, harvesting what they can before the ocean reclaims the land. Some islands disappear for just minutes, others for hours, their schedules as reliable as clockwork, yet forever precarious. Fishermen know these ephemeral lands intimately, understanding which will emerge when planning their work around the ocean's breathing. The legal implications perplex maritime lawyers. Do territorial waters extend from islands that don't always exist? The Philippines simply accepts this geographic uncertainty, a nation whose very boundaries expand and contract with lunar influence, gaining and losing territory every 6 hours in an endless cycle of appearance and disappearance. Lake Retba in Senegal glows pink like a sunset that fell to earth and pooled in a basin near the Atlantic coast. The color comes from salt-loving algae that produce red pigments to absorb sunlight, turning the entire lake into something from a fever dream. Salt content here rivals the Dead Sea, so dense that swimmers float without effort, unable to sink even if they tried. Salt collectors wade through pink waters that crystallize on their skin, harvesting white pyramids from a rose-colored lake. The pink intensifies during dry season when salinity peaks and the algae bloom in abundance. From above, the lake looks like a wound in the landscape, or perhaps a pool of liquid rose quartz bordered by brilliant white salt mountains that workers have piled along the shores. The contrast defies expectation. Pink water, white shores, green vegetation just meters away, where fresh groundwater lets plants grow. Women protect their skin with shea butter before entering waters that would otherwise burn, emerging from pink baths covered in salt armor. Canada and Denmark recently ended their decades-long whiskey war over Hans Island, a barren rock between Greenland and Ellesmere Island. For years, each nation would visit the island, plant their flag, and leave a bottle of alcohol for the other side. Canadian whiskey from Canada, schnapps from Denmark. This civilized territorial dispute became known as the friendliest war in history, fought with spirits instead of weapons. The island itself, barely over a square kilometer of bare rock, supports no life beyond occasional visiting seabirds. Yet it mattered enough for diplomats to spend decades negotiating, for naval vessels to make ceremonial visits, for flags to be raised and removed in an endless cycle. The 2022 agreement split the island, creating a land border between Canada and Europe, between North America and the Danish kingdom. The Whiskey War ended with both nations winning, sharing an island that neither truly needs, but neither could abandon. The Cave of Crystals beneath Nica, Mexico, contains selenite beams that dwarf human visitors, some stretching 12 meters long and weighing 55 tons. These translucent pillars grew in mineral-rich water heated by magma below, taking 500,000 years to reach their current size. The cave remained flooded until mining operations pumped it dry in 2000, revealing a crystal palace that seems designed for giants. The formations are so pure you can see through meters of solid crystal, light passing through as if through enormous prisms. The cave's extreme conditions, nearly 60 degrees Celsius with humidity near 100%, mean humans can only survive inside for minutes without special cooling suits. Since pumping stopped, the cave has reflooded to preserve the crystals, sealing this geological cathedral from human eyes once again. The crystals will resume their patient growth, adding microscopic layers year by year, indifferent to whether anyone will ever see them again. Monaco packs an entire sovereign nation into a space smaller than New York's Central Park, yet manages to be one of the world's wealthiest countries per capita. Every square meter has been engineered for maximum utility. Apartment buildings rise from what were once beaches, land reclaimed from the sea host's luxury developments, and the famous casino sits where marshland once bred mosquitoes. The country is so small that it takes serious effort to get lost, yet it maintains all the apparatus of nationhood: a royal palace, a national orchestra, a constitution. Monaco has no income tax, yet provides extensive social services, funding itself through creative means that larger nations couldn't replicate. The entire country could fit inside many airports, yet it hosts a Formula One race that threads through its streets, transforming the nation into a racetrack once a year. Residents have adapted to living in miniature, where your neighbor might be a billionaire and walking to another country takes 5 minutes. Easter Island floats in the Pacific more than 3,500 kilometers from Chile, the country that governs it, making it one of the most remote pieces of sovereign territory on Earth. The journey from Santiago takes nearly 6 hours by plane, crossing an expanse of ocean so vast that emergency landing sites require careful planning. The Rapa Nui people who inhabit the island lived in isolation for centuries, developing a unique culture that produced the famous Moai statues. These massive stone figures, some weighing 80 tons, were somehow transported across the island by a population that never exceeded a few thousand. The island exists in such isolation that species evolution accelerated. The now extinct Easter Island palm grew nowhere else. Today's residents live with the peculiar psychology of ultimate remoteness, where the nearest shopping mall is a continent away, where medical emergencies require international evacuation, where the ocean horizon encompasses more than half the visible world. Mount Roraima rises from the junction of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana like a table set for giants. Its summit, a flat plateau larger than many towns. This Tepui, or Table Mountain, inspired Arthur Conan Doyle to imagine dinosaurs surviving on its isolated summit, separated from the lowlands by cliffs nearly 1,000 meters tall. The summit does host unique species, though they're smaller than dinosaurs. Tiny black frogs that can't hop, carnivorous plants that evolved to capture nutrients in the sterile sandstone environment. Rain falls almost daily on the summit, creating temporary waterfalls that plunge off the edges into clouds below. The plateau contains crystal valleys, stone labyrinths, and pools that have never connected to waters below. Walking across the summit feels like traversing an alien world, where evolution took different turns, where plants and animals developed solutions to problems the rest of Earth never posed. 3 countries meet at its peak, though the borders matter little to the endemic species that know no other world. Finland calls itself the land of 1,000 lakes while actually possessing 188,000 of them, a modest understatement that seems characteristically Finnish. The country defines a lake as any body of water larger than 500 square meters, roughly the size of 2 tennis courts, which means some lakes are what others might call ponds. Yet even with this generous definition, the number astounds, roughly 1 lake for every 30 people. The landscape appears shattered, as if water and land competed for space and compromised by interweaving completely. Summer cottages dot nearly every shoreline, a cultural tradition so embedded that Finnish presidents conduct official business from their lake retreats. The lakes freeze in winter, becoming highways for kick sleds and skiers, then melt in spring to become obstacles that require 10,000 bridges to cross. From above, Finland looks like blue camouflage, water and forest, creating patterns that repeat across the entire country. The Salton Sea spreads across California's Imperial Valley as a testament to engineering gone wrong, created when irrigation canals burst in 1905 and the Colorado River poured into the desert for 2 years. The accidental sea became California's largest lake, a resort destination in the 1950s where celebrities water skied and Frank Sinatra crooned at yacht clubs. But the sea had no outlet, growing saltier each year as agricultural runoff accumulated. Fish began dying in massive numbers, their corpses creating beaches of bones. Resort towns emptied, leaving abandoned motels and yacht clubs to the desert sun. Today, the sea is saltier than the Pacific, its shores lined with dead tilapia and the ruins of mid-century optimism. Yet it's become critical habitat for migrating birds, one of the few wetlands remaining in the Colorado desert. The sea continues shrinking, exposing lakebed that becomes toxic dust, creating air quality crises for surrounding communities. California debates whether to save it or let it die. This accident that became essential, this mistake that nature adopted. Socotra Island separated from the Arabian Peninsula 6 million years ago, enough time for evolution to create a biological treasure chest. 1/3 of its plant species exist nowhere else on Earth, including dragon's blood trees that look like giant umbrellas turned inside out, bleeding crimson resin when cut. The desert rose grows with bulbous trunks like botanical sculptures, storing water for droughts that last years. The island's isolation preserved species that went extinct everywhere else, creating landscapes that seem more fictional than real. Socotra blue baboons vanished before scientists could study them. The Socotri language has no written form, existing only in the mouths of islanders who speak words that predate Arabic influence. Located where the Arabian Sea meets the Indian Ocean, the island catches monsoons that support its unique ecology, creating cloud forests and highlands while lowlands bake in desert heat. Yemen governs it from across dangerous waters, but Socotra remains its own world, speaking its own language, growing its own reality. Whittier, Alaska, consolidates an entire town into a single 14-story building where residents live, work, and attend school without ever going outside. The Bagich Towers houses about 85% of the town's 272 residents, containing the police station, post office, medical clinic, and city offices within its concrete walls. Underground tunnels connect to the school, allowing children to walk to class without facing winter storms that can trap the town for days. The building was constructed during the Cold War as military housing, built to withstand earthquakes and winter isolation. Residents have adapted to extreme communal living. Everyone knows everyone's business when you share hallways, when your mayor lives 2 floors up, when dating means the whole building knows by breakfast. The psychological effects of such concentrated living create unique social dynamics. Privacy becomes negotiable, solitude precious. Some residents thrive in this ultimate community, others leave within months, unable to adjust to life in a concrete hive surrounded by Alaska's vast wilderness. Lake Kivu spreads between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, beautiful on its surface while hiding a potentially catastrophic secret in its depths. The lake contains 300 cubic kilometers of dissolved carbon dioxide and 65 cubic kilometers of methane trapped under pressure in deep waters. These gases accumulated over geological time from volcanic activity below, held in solution like a massive carbonated drink waiting to explode. Scientists call it a limnic eruption when such lakes suddenly release their gas, and when it happened at Lake Nyos in Cameroon, 1,700 people died in minutes. Kivu contains 1,000 times more gas than Nyos. 2 million people live along its shores, fishing its waters, unaware they're living beside a potential natural bomb. Yet the same gases that pose this threat could provide energy for generations if carefully extracted. Rwanda has begun methane extraction projects, slowly siphoning the danger while generating electricity, turning a geological threat into an economic opportunity. Venice slowly descends into the lagoon that gave it life, sinking 1 to 2 millimeters each year while sea levels rise to meet it. The city stands on millions of wooden pilings driven into marsh mud centuries ago, logs that haven't rotted because the oxygen-poor mud preserves them like pickles in brine. But the weight of marble palaces and stone churches compresses the soft sediment below, the city settling under its own ambition. Aqua alta, the high water that floods the city, comes more frequently each decade. Venetians have adapted with raised walkways and rubber boots, treating floods as inconveniences rather than disasters. The Mose Project, massive floodgates designed to protect the lagoon, attempts to engineer salvation, though many doubt. Technology can save what time and tide seem determined to claim. Tourists photograph themselves in flooded St. Mark's Square, turning disaster into entertainment, while residents move their valuables to upper floors and wait for the water to recede as their ancestors have done for generations. The Darvaza gas crater in Turkmenistan has burned continuously for over 50 years, a flaming pit in the Karakum Desert that locals call the door to hell. Soviet geologists drilling for gas deposits in 1971 broke through into an underground cavern, causing the ground to collapse into a crater 70 meters wide. To prevent dangerous gases from poisoning the air, they decided to burn it off, expecting the gas to exhaust itself in days. The flames still burn today, fed by natural gas seeping from below, creating a spectacle visible for kilometers at night. The president ordered it extinguished in 2010, but the crater ignored the decree and kept burning. Spiders live in the crater's crevices, somehow surviving next to the flames, attracting birds that risk the heat to hunt them. The crater has become an unlikely tourist attraction, drawing visitors to camp at the edge of this wound in the desert that refuses to heal, watching flames that have outlasted the country that created them. Gibraltar Airport requires traffic on Winston Churchill Avenue to stop every time a plane lands or takes off, the runway bisecting the territory's main road. Red lights flash, barriers descend like railroad crossings, and cars wait while aircraft pass meters away. This is the only airport in the world where a major road crosses an active runway at grade. The arrangement exists because Gibraltar has almost no flat land. The famous rock dominates the peninsula, leaving only a narrow strip where Spain meets the British territory. The runway itself extends into the bay on reclaimed land, yet still isn't long enough for large aircraft. Pedestrians can walk across the runway when it's clear, taking selfies on the same tarmac where jets land. The crossing creates surreal moments. Business people, late for flights, stuck behind the very plane they're trying to catch. Tourists photographing aircraft from closer than any airport usually allows. Russia sold Alaska to the United States for $7 million in 1867, a transaction that seemed reasonable at the time, but now appears as history's greatest real estate bargain. The Russians, fearing they couldn't defend this remote territory and needing money after the Crimean War, offered it to America rather than risk Britain taking it for free. Americans called it Seward's folly, mocking the Secretary of State who negotiated the purchase of what seemed like worthless ice. The price worked out to about 2 cents per acre for what would become America's largest state, containing oil reserves worth trillions, gold that funded Western development, and strategic position that proved invaluable during World War II and the Cold War. The purchase receipt still exists, handwritten in English and French, transferring a territory twice the size of Texas for less than some Manhattan apartments cost today. The Maldives exists so close to sea level that the nation's highest point reaches only 2.5 meters above the Indian Ocean. The entire country averages just 1.5 meters of elevation, making it Earth's lowest nation, a country that could disappear entirely with modest sea level rise. The government has held underwater cabinet meetings to highlight their plight, ministers in scuba gear signing documents on the seafloor. They've also investigated purchasing land in other countries, preparing for the possibility of evacuating an entire nation. Yet development continues. New resorts built on islands that might not exist in decades. An airport expanded on land that climate models suggest will flood. The Maldivian president once announced plans to make the nation carbon neutral, the lowest country trying to prevent the rising seas that threaten to erase it. Traditional Maldivian houses are built with coral stones, the nation literally constructed from the sea that now threatens to reclaim it. Libya's great man-made river moves water from ancient aquifers deep beneath the Sahara to coastal cities through a network of pipes that would stretch halfway around the equator. This engineering marvel, largely unknown outside Libya, delivers 6.5 million cubic meters of water daily through concrete pipes large enough to drive trucks through. The water comes from the Nubian sandstone aquifer, fossil water that fell as rain when the Sahara was green, trapped underground for thousands of years. The project took decades to build, cost billions, and created the world's largest irrigation project. Gaddafi called it the 8th wonder of the world, though the world barely noticed. The pipes run beneath the desert, invisible from above, except where access points break the surface like technological oases. This river flows without gradient, pushed by pumps through manufactured channels, delivering prehistoric water to modern cities, quenching thirst with rain that fell before human civilization began. Ball's Pyramid rises from the Tasman Sea like a needle of rock, the world's tallest volcanic stack, jutting 562 meters from the ocean, while its base spans barely 200 meters. This impossibly thin spire southeast of Australia defies what mountains should look like, more skyscraper than geological formation. Climbers who've scaled its near-vertical faces describe it as ascending a crumbling wall in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but ocean for hundreds of kilometers. The pyramid formed 7 million years ago, all that remains of a volcanic island that the sea has otherwise completely eroded. On its precipitous ledges grows the rarest insect in the world, the Lord Howe Island stick insect, thought extinct for 80 years until a few dozen were discovered surviving on this barren rock. The insects cling to a few melaleuca bushes growing from cracks in the stone, an entire species existing on 1 vertical acre of vegetation surrounded by cliff and ocean. Ships passing at night report the pyramid looks like a shadow torn in the stars, a black absence where rock blocks the sky. France's longest land border stretches not across Europe but through the Amazon rainforest, where French Guiana meets Brazil for 730 kilometers. This peculiarity of colonial history means France shares more border with Brazil than with any European nation, that Amazonian tribes can walk from South America into the European Union without crossing water. The border runs through some of Earth's least accessible terrain, marked more by GPS coordinates than physical barriers. Jaguars cross between France and Brazil without passports. Rivers flow from the EU into South America, and the euro is legal tender in jungle settlements. This accident of empire creates administrative absurdities. French civil law applies in rainforest villages, European agricultural subsidies support tropical farms, and children in dugout canoes attend schools that follow the curriculum of Paris. The border exists mostly in theory, a line drawn on maps through forests so dense that no one has walked its entire length. Yet it matters for the indigenous peoples who suddenly find themselves European citizens, voting in French elections from villages accessible only by river. The Aral Sea has transformed from the world's 4th largest lake into a cautionary tale written in salt and sand. Since 1960, it has lost 90% of its water, splitting into 4 smaller lakes surrounded by a new desert, the Aralkum. Ships that once fished these waters now sit rusting in sand hundreds of kilometers from the nearest shore, maritime ghosts in a waterless wasteland. The fishing town of Moynac, once a bustling port, now overlooks only dust, its harbor transformed into a ship graveyard where children play on vessels that will never float again. Soviet irrigation projects diverted the rivers that fed the sea, sending water to cotton fields instead of the lake. The exposed seabed, laden with agricultural chemicals and salt, creates toxic dust storms that reach as far as the Himalayas. Astronauts report they can watch the sea shrinking from space, each year revealing more of the pale seabed like a slowly opening eye. What remains grows ever saltier, too saline now for the fish that once supported an entire industry. The Aral Sea is dying in real time, a geographic death witnessed by satellites and mourned by those who remember when it was truly a sea. Zealandia hides beneath the Pacific, a continent 94% submerged, with only New Zealand and New Caledonia rising above the waves like mountain peaks of a drowned land. This hidden continent spans 5 million square kilometers, larger than the Indian subcontinent, yet we only confirmed its existence in 2017. It broke away from Antarctica and Australia 85 million years ago, slowly sinking as the crust stretched and thinned. If ocean levels dropped, Zealandia would emerge as Earth's 8th continent, revealing a landmass that's been sleeping beneath the waves since before mammals evolved. Marine geologists mapping its submerged mountains and valleys find evidence of forests and rivers, of a landscape that once knew sunshine and rain. The discovery reminds us that our planet's geography isn't fixed. Continents can sink, Oceans can claim entire worlds. Ships sail unknowingly over Zealandia's hidden mountains. Whales swim through what were once valleys where dinosaurs might have walked. New Zealand, which seemed like remote islands, turns out to be the highest points of a vast continent that chose to become seafloor. Coober Pedy in Australia has driven its population underground, creating a subterranean town where 80% of residents live in dugout homes carved from rock. The surface temperature regularly exceeds 50 degrees Celsius, making conventional life impossible in this opal mining town in the South Australian desert. Residents have excavated an entire underground world. Churches, hotels, shops, even a golf course where players carry pieces of artificial turf to create temporary greens. The constant underground temperature of 23 degrees requires no heating or cooling, a perfect climate control achieved by burrowing into the earth. Houses expand by simply digging new rooms. Interior decoration involves leaving beautiful veins of rock exposed in walls. Some homes connect to opal mines, residents occasionally finding valuable stones while renovating their kitchens. The town's name comes from Aboriginal words meaning white man in a hole, a description that proved prophetic. Above ground, the landscape looks like a war zone. Thousands of mining holes and mullock heaps stretching to the horizon, while below, families live in surprising comfort, protected from the desert's fury by millions of years of compressed sand. Lake Turkana stretches through Kenya's Rift Valley like a jade serpent in the desert, the world's largest permanent desert lake fed primarily by Ethiopia's Omo River. The lake has no outlet, trapping water in this basin where it slowly evaporates under the equatorial sun, growing saltier each year. Crocodiles grow larger here than almost anywhere else, some exceeding 6 meters, descendants of reptiles that have hunted these shores for millions of years. The lake's color shifts from blue to green depending on the algae blooms, earning it the nickname Jade Sea. 3 million years ago, our human ancestors walked these shores, leaving footprints and tools that make this region one of humanity's most important archaeological sites. The lake supports people who've adapted to its harsh bounty: the Turkana, El Molo, and other groups who fish its waters and honor its moods. Islands in the lake host breeding colonies of flamingos, crocodiles, and water birds, while its shores reveal fossils that rewrite human history with each expedition. Yet the lake is shrinking as Ethiopia builds dams upstream, another great lake beginning its transformation into memory. Oymyakon, Russia, endures as the coldest permanently inhabited place on Earth, where the temperature once plummeted to negative 67.7 degrees Celsius. The 500 residents have adapted to cold that makes exposed skin freeze in minutes, where car engines run continuously all winter because if they stop, they might never start again. The ground remains permanently frozen to depths of 1,400 meters, permafrost so deep that bodies buried in the cemetery never decompose. Digging graves in winter requires lighting fires to thaw the ground layer by layer, a process that can take days. Mobile phones don't work because batteries instantly die, glasses freeze to faces, and pen ink solidifies before it can mark paper. Yet people have lived here for centuries. Indigenous, even herders who followed reindeer, later joined by others drawn by gold and Soviet development. Children attend school unless temperatures drop below negative 52 degrees. The irony of Oymyakon's name, which means unfrozen water, comes from a nearby hot spring, one small spot of warmth in Earth's coldest inhabited landscape. The Bay of Fundy between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia orchestrates the world's highest tides, water levels that vary by up to 16 meters twice daily. This means a place where you could anchor a 4-story building at high tide, becomes dry land you can walk across 6 hours later. The 100 billion tons of water that flow in and out exceed the combined flow of all Earth's rivers. These extreme tides sculpt the landscape into flower pot rocks, sea stacks that look like giant pottery standing on the ocean floor at low tide, then appearing as tiny islands at high tide. Boats rest on mud flats like beached whales, waiting for the water's return. The reversing falls of St. John actually flow backward when high tide overpowers the river's current. Marine life has adapted to this extreme environment. Organisms that survive being submerged then exposed, frozen then thawed, pounded by waves then left in still air. The Mi'kmaq people have navigated these tides for thousands of years, understanding that here, the ocean doesn't just rise and fall, but transforms the entire world twice daily. Indonesia archipelago stretches across 5,000 kilometers of equatorial ocean, wider than the continental United States, comprising over 17,000 islands, though only about 6,000 have names and fewer than 1,000 are permanently inhabited. This nation exists more in water than on land, its people often closer to citizens of other countries than to their own capital. Some Indonesian islands are so remote that their existence was only confirmed by satellite imagery. The country spans 3 time zones, hosts more active volcanoes than any other nation, and bridges Asia and Australia, both biologically and geologically. Wallace's Line runs through Indonesia, dividing Asian fauna from Australian, a boundary invisible to the eye, but clear in the species on either side. Dragons live on Komodo, orangutans in Sumatra and Borneo, and thousands of endemic species on islands that have been isolated for millennia. The logistics of governing this sprawling nation boggle comprehension, delivering mail to 17,000 islands, providing services across 3 million square kilometers of territory that's mostly ocean. McMurdo dry valleys in Antarctica haven't seen rain for at least 2 million years, making them drier than any hot desert on Earth. These valleys exist in a precipitation shadow, mountains blocking the ice sheets that cover the rest of Antarctica, creating a landscape more Mars than Earth. The ground is bare rock and sand, occasionally interrupted by frozen lakes covered with ice so clear you can see through meters of it to the microbial mats below. The only water comes from glaciers that creep into the valleys, their faces bleeding streams during the brief summer when temperatures rise just enough for ice to melt. Scientists find mummified seals here, hundreds of miles from the ocean, perfectly preserved by the dry cold, some dead for thousands of years. No one knows why the seals traveled so far inland to die. The valleys host some of Earth's simplest ecosystems, just bacteria, and in summer, microscopic worms that constitute the top of the food chain. NASA tests Mars rovers here because it's the most Martian place on Earth, a preview of landscapes on other worlds. The Congo River plunges to depths that shouldn't exist in a river, reaching 220 meters deep in its lower stretches. This is deep enough to submerge a 20-story building with room to spare, creating underwater canyons that rival ocean trenches. The depth creates distinct layers of water that don't mix, each with its own temperature and chemistry, almost separate rivers stacked vertically. Fish species have evolved in these different layers, some living their entire lives at specific depths, never seeing sunlight or surface. The river's depth defies conventional understanding of how rivers work. Most great rivers are relatively shallow, but the Congo seems to be carving its way toward the Earth's center. These depths create rapids and whirlpools that make navigation treacherous, including the Inga Rapids, which contain more power than any other rapids on Earth. If harnessed, these rapids could electrify much of Africa. though the engineering challenges of building in such depths seem almost insurmountable. Bouvet Island emerges from the South Atlantic as the most remote island on Earth, 1,700 kilometers from the nearest land, which itself is Antarctica's uninhabited coast. Norway claims this ice-covered volcanic island, though no one has ever lived there permanently. 93% glacier-covered, with no harbors and cliffs on every side. It's almost impossible to land on. Those who've managed describe a landscape of ice, rock, and seabirds, with no plants except some lichens and mosses. A mystery boat was discovered there in 1964, with no explanation of how it arrived or whose it was. The island is so isolated it has its own internet domain, .bv, though no internet connection. Surrounding waters are so rough that supply ships can only attempt landing a few days per year. Yet nations value this frozen rock enough that Norway maintains an automated weather station there, data transmitted from one of Earth's loneliest places. The Mariana Trench descends 11 kilometers below sea level, so deep that if Mount Everest were placed at its bottom, the peak would still be covered by 2 kilometers of water. This crack in Earth's crust exists where tectonic plates meet and one slides beneath another, creating a valley deeper than mountains are tall. The pressure at the bottom equals 1,000 atmospheres, enough to compress air into liquid. Yet life exists even here: xenophyophores, sea cucumbers, and bacterial mats that thrive in eternal darkness under pressure that would instantly crush most submarines. The trench is surprisingly noisy. The sound of earthquakes, volcanic activity, and even shipping traffic from thousands of kilometers away funnels into this depression. Only 3 humans have ever reached the deepest point, fewer than have walked on the moon. James Cameron reported seeing plastic waste at the bottom, human contamination reaching Earth's most remote depths. Svalbard requires no visa from any nationality. Anyone can live and work there indefinitely without permission, one of the only places on Earth with such freedom of movement. This Norwegian archipelago in the Arctic Ocean maintains this unique status due to a 1920 treaty that grants sovereignty to Norway but guarantees access to all treaty nations. The catch is that you must be completely self-sufficient. There's no welfare system, and those who can't support themselves are deported. Everyone must carry rifles outside settlements for polar bear protection, a legal requirement that makes Svalbard possibly the most armed society on Earth. The permafrost prevents burial of bodies, which must be flown to the mainland. The global seed vault burrows into the permafrost here, storing backup copies of the world's agricultural heritage in the natural deep freeze. 4 months of total darkness, followed by 4 months of midnight sun, create psychological challenges that drive many away within a year. The empty quarter spreads across southern Saudi Arabia, a sand sea larger than France, where no permanent human settlements exist. The Rub al-Khali, as it's known in Arabic, contains sand dunes higher than the Eiffel Tower, some reaching 300 meters, shaped and reshaped by winds that have blown for millennia. Temperatures reach 55 degrees Celsius, and rain might not fall for years. Yet Bedouins cross it, following routes passed down through generations, finding water in places unmarked on any map. Satellites have discovered lost cities buried beneath the sand, settlements from when this desert was grassland. Oil fields dot its edges, but the interior remains one of Earth's least explored regions. Mapping expeditions still discover new geographic features: salt flats, quicksand, and gravel plains between the dunes. The sand sings here when conditions are right, a low humming caused by grains sliding against each other, the desert's own music echoing across the emptiness. Lake Nicaragua harbors the world's only freshwater sharks, bull sharks that adapted to live 200 kilometers from the ocean. These sharks were once thought to be a unique species, trapped when the lake separated from the Pacific. But scientists discovered they actually migrate up the San Juan River from the Caribbean, like salmon in reverse, navigating rapids to reach the lake. The sharks have lived here so long that locals consider them part of the lake's identity, though swimming is inadvisable. The lake also contains Ometepe, an island formed by two volcanoes, creating an island in a lake with lakes on the island, a geographic nesting doll. The Spanish conquistadors planned to build a canal here before Panama was chosen, and the idea resurfaces periodically, though the lake's unique ecology would never survive such development. Revolutionary poets wrote that the lake looked like a sea, so vast you can't see across it, sweet water stretching to the horizon. Null Island exists at coordinates 0 degrees latitude, 0 degrees longitude, where the prime meridian meets the equator in the Gulf of Guinea. Except it doesn't really exist. There's no island here, just a weather buoy moored in empty ocean. Yet this non-place receives millions of digital visitors annually, GPS errors and coding mistakes sending data to 0.0 when real coordinates fail. The island has its own website, flag, and fictional history, a running joke among cartographers about the place that exists everywhere and nowhere. Ships pass through Null Island without knowing, their GPS briefly registering this mathematical point where Earth's coordinate system centers. The buoy stationed here, part of the Parada system, measures ocean temperature and weather, sending data from the planet's origin point. In a sense, Null Island is the most visited place that doesn't exist, a geography of errors, a homeland for lost data. The Faroe Islands maintain twice as many sheep as people, 80,000 sheep to 50,000 humans scattered across 18 volcanic islands in the North Atlantic. The sheep roam freely, marking the landscape with paths worn over centuries, their wool providing the material for traditional Faroes sweaters that can reportedly repel any weather. These islands experience all 4 seasons in a single day, sunshine to snowstorm in minutes. Weather so changeable that locals say if you don't like it, wait 5 minutes. The islands have more helicopters per capita than anywhere else, the aircraft serving as buses between islands when storms make boat travel impossible. Waterfalls flow upward here when Atlantic winds hit the cliffs just right, gravity temporarily reversed by air pressure. Houses have grass roofs not for aesthetics, but for insulation, the sod and grass providing protection from winds that can exceed 200 kilometers per hour. Chile stretches along South America's western edge like a geographic exclamation point, 4,300 kilometers long, but averaging only 177 kilometers wide. This absurd proportion means Chile has every climate on Earth except tropical rainforest, glaciers in the south, the world's driest desert in the north, Mediterranean vineyards in the center. The country is so narrow that you can sometimes see both the Andes and the Pacific from the same spot, mountains and ocean compressed into a single view. Chile contains part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, with active volcanoes and frequent earthquakes that reshape its geography regularly. The town of Chile Chico experiences such violent winds that chains hold down roofs and cars. Easter Island, 2,600 miles west, belongs to Chile, making it a country that extends a quarter of the way around Earth's circumference, despite being narrower than many U.S. states. Pitcairn Island in the South Pacific houses just 50 residents, descendants of the Bounty mutineers who arrived in 1790, seeking the most remote hiding place on Earth. The island has one road, one store that opens 3 times a week, and internet that arrives via satellite. Everyone is related to everyone else, sharing just 4 family names among them. The island's only income comes from selling domain names, tam.pn, honey, and stamps to collectors. Supply ships arrive 4 times per year, weather permitting, bringing everything from fuel to flour. Children must leave for high school, traveling to New Zealand, 3,000 miles away. The island has no airport, no safe harbor, just a small inlet where boats risk landing when swells permit. British law applies here, administered by a mayor and island council, dealing with a population smaller than most apartment buildings. The mutineers chose well. Pitcairn remained hidden for 18 years after their arrival, and even today, it remains one of the hardest places on Earth to reach. The Diomede Islands in the Bering Strait sit so close you could shout across the water between them, yet they exist in different days. Big Diomede belongs to Russia, Little Diomede to America, separated by less than 4 kilometers of often frozen sea, but divided by 21 hours, the largest time difference between any neighbors on Earth. When children on Little Diomede wake for school on Monday morning, it's already Tuesday afternoon on Big Diomede. The international date line passes between them, an invisible wall through time. During winter, the sea freezes solid enough that you could theoretically walk from today into tomorrow, from Alaska into Russia, though armed patrols on both sides discourage such temporal tourism. The indigenous peoples who lived here traded freely across the strait for thousands of years, until the Cold War turned neighbors into enemies. Families split not just by distance, but by days. Now, Little Diomede's residents can see Russians on Big Diomede, but cannot visit, watching tomorrow's weather arrive from an island they're forbidden to reach, the closest and farthest place simultaneously. Mount Thor on Baffin Island presents Earth's greatest purely vertical drop, a granite face that plunges 1,250 meters without interruption. This is a wall that takes 20 full seconds of freefall to descend, longer than most skydivers experience before opening their parachutes. The cliff face actually overhangs by 15 degrees, meaning climbers ascending it hang out over nothing, dangling above air for nearly a vertical kilometer. The mountain stands in Auyuituk National Park, whose name means the land that never melts in Inuktitut, though climate change challenges that ancient description. Base jumpers consider Thor's face the ultimate test, a wall so tall that jumpers can reach terminal velocity before deploying parachutes. The granite formed over 1 billion years ago, carved by glaciers into this impossible geometry. Clouds often obscure the bottom from the top, climbers rappelling into whiteness, trusting their ropes to find ground they cannot see. The local Inuit have different names for the mountain depending on which side you approach from, each face presenting a different personality of stone. The Katara Depression in Egypt sinks into the Sahara, like a vast footprint, covering an area larger than Lake Ontario, but filled with salt and sand instead of water. This basin drops 133 meters below sea level, making it Africa's second lowest point. For decades, engineers have proposed flooding it with Mediterranean water to generate hydroelectric power and create an inland sea, but the project remains a desert dream. During World War II, the depression's soft sand and salt marshes made it impassable to armies, channeling Rommel's Africa Corps into predictable routes that helped determine the war's outcome. Salt marshes at the bottom gleam white in the sun, while the edges drop in dramatic sand cliffs that trucks cannot descend. Gazelles and foxes survive here, finding water in springs that bubble through the salt. Some scientists suggest the depression could moderate Egypt's climate if flooded, creating rain where now there's only sand, transforming a below-sea-level desert into an actual sea. Bir Kiseba in Sudan receives more sunshine than any other spot on Earth, with the sun shining for 4,300 hours annually, essentially every daylight hour of the year. Clouds are so rare here that many residents go years without seeing one. This relentless sunshine creates a landscape baked to abstraction, where colors fade and shadows provide the only relief. Less than 1 millimeter of rain falls annually, sometimes none at all, making this among Earth's driest places. Yet archaeological evidence shows this wasn't always desert. 10,000 years ago, humans fished from lakes here, leaving bone harpoons in what's now just sand. The sun here isn't just bright, but physically oppressive, creating temperatures that make midday movement dangerous. Solar panels would seem perfect here, but the remoteness and heat that damages equipment make development impractical. The sunshine that defines Bir Kiseba also limits it, creating conditions so extreme that even desert-adapted life struggles to persist. Surtsey emerged from the Atlantic Ocean near Iceland in November 1963, born in volcanic fire while the world watched. Fishermen first noticed smoke rising from the sea, then an island appeared, growing to nearly 3 square kilometers before erosion began reclaiming it. Scientists immediately declared it a natural laboratory, restricting access to observe how life colonizes virgin land. The first plant appeared within 2 years. The first birds nested within 4. Now, 60 years later, the island hosts multiple plant species, seabirds and seals, life assembling itself from nothing. Only a few scientists can visit, walking designated paths to avoid disturbing this experiment in Genesis. The island shrinks each year, waves reclaiming what lava built, already half its maximum size. Surtsey will likely disappear within a century or two, its entire existence spanning less time than many trees live. But its brief life provides invaluable data about how islands form communities, how life finds even the newest, most barren places. La Rinconada, Peru, perches at 5,100 meters in the Andes, the world's highest permanent settlement, where 50,000 people live above half of Earth's atmosphere. At this altitude, water boils at 85 degrees Celsius, too cool to properly cook food. Newcomers often faint walking upstairs until their bodies produce extra red blood cells. The town exists solely for gold mining, built on a glacier that's now mostly covered in garbage and human waste. There's no sewage system, no garbage collection, no running water in most buildings. Miners work under a system called cachorreo. They labor unpaid for 30 days. Then, on the 31st, can keep whatever ore they extract in a frantic shift. Bodies of those who die in the mines are sometimes left where they fall, the effort of carrying them out at altitude too exhausting. The cemetery sits even higher than the town, as if the dead must climb further toward heaven. The Kerguelen Islands scatter across the southern Indian Ocean, so remote they're called the Desolation Islands, where howling winds and ship-killing waves guard one of Earth's loneliest archipelagos. No airports exist here. Reaching these French territories requires a week's sailing from Réunion through some of the world's roughest seas. The islands host more penguins than the few dozen researchers who maintain France's scientific station. Introduced rabbits and cats have destroyed native bird populations, while reindeer brought from Arctic islands somehow thrive. The wind here never stops, averaging 35 kilometers per hour year-round, occasionally gusting over 150. Glaciers cover much of the main island, though they're retreating, revealing landscapes that haven't seen sunlight since humans evolved. Captain Cook discovered but didn't land here, writing that he could imagine no reason anyone would want to. Yet the island's position makes them strategically valuable for satellite tracking and atmospheric research, a place so remote it provides undisturbed baseline data for planetary changes. Bloodfalls flows from Taylor Glacier in Antarctica, staining the ice red as if the continent were bleeding. The color comes from iron oxide, rust from an ancient lake trapped beneath the glacier 2 million years ago. This subglacial lake contains water 3 times saltier than the ocean, so saline it remains liquid at temperatures well below freezing. Microbes isolated in this dark, oxygen-free environment for millions of years still live, using sulfate instead of oxygen for energy, iron instead of sunlight. When the pressurized water finds a crack in the glacier, it spurts out, the iron immediately oxidizing, on contact with air, turning blood red. The falls flow intermittently, active for years, then stopping for decades, as if the glacier controls its own bleeding. Scientists study these microbes as models for potential life on Mars or Jupiter's moons, organisms that prove life can persist in conditions that seem impossible. The Republic of Molossia claims sovereignty over 5 hectares of Nevada desert, a micronation with its own currency, postal system, and navy, 1 kayak. Founded in 1977, Molossia maintains it has been at war with East Germany since 1983, continuing the conflict despite East Germany ceasing to exist in 1990. The president, who is also the entire population except for when family visits, has issued over 40,000 Valora coins and maintains a space program consisting of model rockets. The nation has a railroad, model trains, an air force, also model, and claims territory on the planet Venus. While legally part of the United States, Molossia bans onions, catfish, and anything from Texas. The national anthem is the Polish national anthem with different words. This might seem like elaborate play, but Molossia demonstrates how arbitrary nationhood can be. If you declare independence consistently enough, maintain your own currency, issue passports, and conduct foreign policy, at what point does pretense become reality? Lake Natron in Tanzania maintains water so caustic it can burn the skin off animals that dare to enter, with pH levels approaching that of ammonia. The lake turns creatures that die in its waters into calcified statues, preserved by the same sodium carbonate that ancient Egyptians used for mummification. Yet this chemical hell is the only regular breeding ground for lesser flamingos in East Africa, millions arriving to nest on salt islands that predators cannot cross. The flamingo's tough skin and scaled legs protect them from water that would kill most other birds. The lake's red color comes from microorganisms that thrive in the alkaline soup, the same organisms that flamingos eat, which turn their feathers pink. Temperatures here can reach 60 degrees Celsius, hot enough to give third-degree burns. Local pilots avoid flying over the lake because the surface can appear solid, an optical illusion that has caused crashes. This is nature at its most paradoxical, a poisonous lake that's essential for life, deadly water that enables birth. Kaliningrad Oblast exists as Russia's orphan child, completely separated from the motherland by Lithuania and Poland, both NATO members. This exclave on the Baltic Sea requires Russians to cross international borders to reach their own territory, like a geographic island that happens to be surrounded by land instead of water. Until 1945, this was Königsberg, founded by Teutonic Knights, home to Immanuel Kant, as German as any city could be. Then World War II ended, populations were expelled and replaced, and a 700-year-old German city became Russian overnight. The region holds Russia's only ice-free Baltic port, making it strategically vital despite its isolation. Residents need special permits to travel to mainland Russia, crossing European Union territory with documents most Russians never require. Nuclear weapons are allegedly stationed here, making this disconnected piece of Russia one of Europe's most militarized regions. The oblast demonstrates how politics can create geography as strange as any natural formation. Palmyra Atoll in the Pacific practices disappearing twice daily, losing nearly 40% of its land area between low and high tide. At low tide, it spreads across 2.5 square kilometers, but high tide reduces it to just over 1.5, making it a part-time island. The atoll consists of 50 tiny islets, many of which vanish completely underwater for hours at a time. During World War II, the US military built an airstrip here, which still exists, though slowly being reclaimed by hermit crabs and seabirds. No permanent population lives here, just researchers and conservation workers on temporary assignments. The atoll's lagoons contain some of the Pacific's most pristine coral reefs, never touched by development or bleaching. Coconut palms, introduced a century ago, have taken over most dry land, their crabs growing so large they can open coconuts with their claws. The sovereignty is American, but the atoll feels like it belongs to no nation, just the tides that constantly reshape it. The Eye of Quebec, properly called Manicouagan Crater, forms one of Earth's most visible impact scars, a perfect ring lake 70 kilometers across that astronauts use as a navigation landmark. Created by an asteroid impact 214 million years ago, around the time dinosaurs were emerging, the crater has become a nearly circular lake surrounding an island that was once the impact's central peak. The ring is so geometrically perfect, it seems artificial from space, as if someone pressed a giant ring into the Canadian shield. The impact was so powerful, it created rocks found nowhere else. Impact melt that cooled into unique formations. Quebec has dammed part of the ring, creating a reservoir that makes the circle even more pronounced. In winter, the frozen ring becomes an ice road, cars driving in a perfect circle on a lake created by cosmic violence. The crater reminds us that Earth's geography includes contributions from space, that some of our planet's features were drawn by asteroids. Lençóis Maranhenses in Brazil presents an impossible landscape, a desert that floods into thousands of crystal-clear pools every rainy season. These aren't mirages, but real freshwater lagoons that appear between brilliant white sand dunes from January to June, then vanish as the dry season progresses. The sand, carried from the interior by rivers and sculpted by wind, creates dunes up to 40 meters tall. When rain comes, it collects in the valleys between dunes, forming temporary lagoons of impossibly blue and green water. Fish appear in these seasonal pools, somehow surviving the dry season buried in wet sand or as eggs, emerging when water returns. Tourists swim in lagoons that won't exist in 6 months, temporary oases that make this desert a part-time aquatic paradise. From above, it looks like someone scattered thousands of mirrors across white silk, each pool reflecting sky. The landscape completely transforms twice yearly, desert becoming archipelago, then returning to desert. The Tarim Basin in China holds mummies older than Egypt's pyramids, European featured people preserved in desert sand 4,000 years before the Silk Road supposedly connected east and west. These perfectly preserved bodies, with blonde and red hair, wearing tartan textiles, suggest ancient migrations we're only beginning to understand. The basin, surrounded by mountains on all sides, created its own cultural pocket, languages and peoples evolving in isolation. The mummy's DNA tells complex stories of migration and mixing that challenge simple narratives about ancient racial boundaries. Some bodies were buried with wheels of cheese, preserved for millennia in the dry climate. The discovery upset Chinese nationalism and European assumptions equally, proving that cultural exchange across Eurasia existed far earlier than written history suggests. The basin's isolation preserved not just bodies but textiles, foods, and artifacts that usually decay, creating a time capsule that rewrites prehistory. Veryovkina Cave in Georgia descends 2,212 meters into Earth's crust, deep enough to stack 5 Empire State Buildings underground with room to spare. Discovered in 1968, but only recently explored to its current depth, it's Earth's deepest known cave, though explorers believe it goes deeper. The journey to the bottom takes professional cavers 4 days, camping in underground chambers larger than cathedrals. Water that enters the cave takes an estimated 2 weeks to reach the bottom, filtering through limestone passages humans haven't yet mapped. The cave breathes. Air pressure changes, creating winds that howl through passages. At depth, the temperature stabilizes at just above freezing, while humidity approaches 100%. Rescue from the bottom would be nearly impossible. An injured caver would need dozens of people and weeks to extract. The cave continues, revealing new passages, each expedition pushing slightly deeper, though psychological pressure builds with depth as surely as atmospheric pressure. Devon Island in Canada's Arctic archipelago spans 55,000 square kilometers without a single permanent resident, Earth's largest uninhabited island. Mars researchers use it as an analog for the red planet, its polar desert so Mars-like that NASA and other space agencies test equipment and procedures here. The island's Houghton crater, formed by an impact 39 million years ago, creates landscapes that wouldn't look out of place in Martian photographs. Summer temperatures rarely exceed 10 degrees Celsius, while winter plunges below -50. The island once supported Thule settlements, but even these hardy Arctic peoples abandoned it centuries ago. Muskoxen and Arctic hares survive here, along with the few plants that can tolerate the brief growing season. Scientists living in the research station describe profound isolation, the psychological weight of being the only humans on a landmass larger than many countries. Yet this emptiness provides valuable data about how humans might cope with the isolation of space travel. The Ganges Delta spreads across Bangladesh and India like Earth's largest river-written signature. 105,000 square kilometers of land built entirely from Himalayan sediment. The mountains erode grain by grain, flowing down sacred rivers to build new land at sea level. This is geology in fast forward, land appearing and disappearing with each monsoon. The delta supports nearly 200 million people, despite being barely above sea level, flooding annually, and facing cyclones that kill thousands. Mangrove forests called the Sundarbans host Bengal tigers that swim between islands, hunting in forests that flood with each tide. The delta contains 300 major rivers and thousands of smaller channels, constantly shifting, making maps obsolete within years. Islands appear and vanish, rivers change course overnight, and entire villages must relocate when the land beneath them migrates. This is geography at its most dynamic, where earth and water negotiate boundaries daily. Ciudad Perdida in Colombia's Sierra Nevada mountains remained hidden for centuries until tomb raiders stumbled upon it in 1972, finding a city built 650 years before Machu Picchu. The Lost City consists of 169 terraces carved into mountainsides, connected by stone paths and stairs through dense jungle. The Tairona people who built it abandoned the city during Spanish conquest, and the jungle swallowed it so completely that even local indigenous groups forgot its location. Reaching it today requires a 6-day trek through rivers, mud, and forest so dense that GPS barely works. The city's sophisticated engineering includes drainage systems that still function, preventing the tropical rains from washing away the terraces. Descendants of the builders, the indigenous Kogi people, knew of the city all along but kept it secret, considering silence its best protection. They call it Teyuna and believe it's the heart of the world where cosmic forces balance. The Four Corners Monument marks where Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico meet, the only point in the United States where four states touch. Except the monument sits 550 meters from where it should be, the result of 19th century surveying errors using astronomical observations and chain measurements across deserts and mountains. The Supreme Court ruled that the marker's location, however incorrect, legally defines the borders, making the error official. This means maps and GPS show borders that don't match legal reality, cartographic truth diverging from legal truth. Tourists pay to stand in four states simultaneously at a spot that shouldn't be the Four Corners, but legally is. The Navajo Nation, which controls the monument, benefits from this geographic mistake that draws hundreds of thousands of visitors annually. The error reminds us that human geography is often more about agreement than accuracy, that borders exist where we collectively decide they exist, even when we're measurably wrong. The Pacific Ocean steadily shrinks while the Atlantic grows, a planetary breathing pattern measured in centimeters per year, but reshaping continents over millions of years. The Pacific loses 2 to 3 centimeters annually, its oceanic plate sliding beneath continental plates in a process called subduction, disappearing into Earth's mantle to be recycled into future geology. Meanwhile, the Atlantic spreads from its mid-ocean ridge, new seafloor born from volcanic activity, pushing Europe and Africa away from the Americas at roughly the speed fingernails grow. This means Los Angeles and Tokyo drift closer each year, while London and New York grow more distant. In 200 million years, the Pacific might close entirely, creating a new supercontinent where the ocean once lay. Ships crossing the Pacific today travel over a disappearing ocean, while Atlantic voyages grow imperceptibly longer. The ring of fire that surrounds the Pacific marks its slow death. Volcanoes and earthquakes, signatures of an ocean being consumed. Yet this happens so slowly that 10,000 human generations could live and die noticing no difference, the ocean's vastness disguising its gradual vanishment. Bir Tawil sits between Egypt and Sudan like a geographic orphan, 2,060 square kilometers of desert that neither country wants. This terra nullius exists because of a colonial border dispute, where each nation claims a different boundary line, and accepting Bir Tawil would mean giving up claims to the more valuable Halib Triangle. So this trapezoid of sand and rock remains unclaimed, one of the few places on Earth where no nation extends sovereignty. Occasionally, individuals arrive to plant flags and declare new nations, but the international community ignores these claims, and the desert soon erases their footprints. No permanent water exists here. No valuable minerals have been found. No strategic importance justifies the diplomatic complications of claiming it. Local Bedouins pass through but don't stay, using ancient routes that predate the borders drawn around this unwanted land. Bir Tawil exists in legal limbo, administered by no one, taxed by no one, protected by no one. It's Earth's last unclaimed land outside Antarctica, a place where you could theoretically stand beyond any nation's law, though the desert itself imposes harsher judgments than any government. Mount Augustus rises from the Australian outback as Earth's largest single rock, twice the size of Uluru, yet virtually unknown beyond Australia. This monolith stretches 8 kilometers long and covers 49 square kilometers, an ancient granite formation wrapped in sandstone like a geological present waiting 2 billion years to be unwrapped. While Uluru attracts millions of tourists, Augustus stands in relative solitude, too remote for casual visitors, 6 hours from the nearest city. The rock changes colors through the day like its famous cousin, but performs for empty audiences. Maybe a few cattle, the occasional wedge-tailed eagle. Aboriginal peoples call it Burungura and consider it a sacred men's site, its caves containing art thousands of years old. The rock formed when magma cooled deep underground, then waited as erosion stripped away everything around it, leaving this massive monument to geological patience. Climbers who reach its summit find a plateau with its own ecosystem, plants that exist nowhere else on the rock, adapted to life on this island of stone in a sea of scrub. The Netherlands packs more people per square kilometer than India, a fact that seems impossible until you consider Dutch mastery over geography itself. 508 people squeeze into each square kilometer, yet the country feels organized rather than crowded, engineered rather than chaotic. This density exists despite 26% of the country lying below sea level, land that shouldn't be habitable at all. The Dutch didn't accept the geography they were given, but built the geography they wanted, creating polders from seafloor, turning lakes into farms, transforming swamps into cities. Every square meter has been planned, designed, allocated. Even nature reserves are carefully managed wildness. The country is so dense that personal space becomes culturally sacred. The Dutch maintain privacy through elaborate social protocols rather than physical distance. Windows have no curtains because transparency proves you have nothing to hide, but no one looks directly inside because privacy is performed rather than built. This is human density elevated to art, proof that crowding doesn't require chaos if you engineer both the land and the social contracts that govern it. Canada contains more lakes than the rest of the world combined, over 2 million of them scattered across the Canadian Shield like puddles after cosmic rain. If you counted 1 lake per second, it would take 23 days without sleep to count them all. These aren't all mighty Great Lakes. Many are humble ponds by most standards, but Canada counts any permanent body of water larger than a hectare. The province of Ontario alone has 250,000 lakes, more than most countries possess in total. This abundance exists because glaciers scraped the bedrock during the last ice age, leaving billions of depressions that filled with meltwater. Some lakes are so remote they have no names, known only by coordinates. Others exist only in summer, freezing solid enough in winter to drive trucks across them. The lakes hold 1/5 of Earth's fresh water, a liquid treasury that becomes more valuable each year. Float planes are essential infrastructure here, the only way to reach thousands of communities. From space, Canada's Lake District looks like Earth developed a rash of blue spots, geography with a case of geological chickenpox. The Atacama Desert in Chile contains places that have never experienced rain in recorded history, weather stations with decades of zeros, soil so devoid of moisture that NASA tested Mars rovers here because it's more Mars-like than anywhere else on Earth. The town of Calama averages less than 5 millimeters of rain per year, often receiving nothing. Yet over 1 million people live within the Atacama's boundaries, ancient cultures that learned to harvest moisture from fog, modern cities that pipe water from distant mountains. The desert is so dry that nothing decays. Centuries-old wooden artifacts lie exposed but perfectly preserved, mummies naturally desiccated by the atmosphere. In rare years when rain does fall, the desert explodes with dormant flowers, seeds that waited decades for moisture, carpeting the valleys in purple and pink. This phenomenon, called desierto florido, lasts only weeks before the desert reclaims its flowers, returning to a landscape where some weather stations have never measured precipitation, where rain exists only as a theoretical possibility. Russia stretches across 11 time zones, a country so vast that sunrise in the east occurs when it's still yesterday in the west. Yet China, nearly as wide, compresses its entire territory into a single time zone, Beijing time from the Pacific to Pakistan. This creates surreal situations in Western China where the sun doesn't rise until 10 in the morning, where lunch happens at what the sun insists is breakfast time. In Xinjiang, locals maintain unofficial local time, 2 hours different from official time, creating a political statement through clock setting. Businesses might open at Beijing's 9 o'clock when the sky suggests it's really 7. Russia once tried something similar, reducing its time zones to create administrative simplicity, but gave up when the human cost of ignoring the sun became too great. China persists, using temporal unity to enforce political unity, making 4,000 kilometers of territory pretend the sun rises simultaneously. The border between China and Afghanistan creates the world's second largest time jump, 3.5 hours difference in a single step, crossing from a country with one zone to a country that carefully observes its half-hour offset. The island of Merkit in the Baltic Sea sparked such a peculiar border dispute that Finland and Sweden had to exchange equal amounts of land to solve it. The tiny island, only 3 hectares of bare rock, had been split between the nations since 1885, but Finland had accidentally built a lighthouse on Sweden's portion. Rather than move the lighthouse, the countries agreed to redraw the border in 1985, creating one of the world's most complex borders on one of its smallest shared territories. The new boundary zigzags across the island in a way that would make gerrymandering politicians proud, ensuring Finland kept its lighthouse while Sweden received an exactly equal amount of rock in compensation. The border is marked by white painted circles on bare stone, creating what looks like a bizarre hopscotch game. No one lives here except seabirds, but both nations maintain their sovereignty with bureaucratic precision. The lighthouse that caused all this trouble is now automated, its keepers long gone, but the border remains in its absurd configuration, proof that nations will divide even the smallest rocks rather than leave anything unclaimed. Death Valley holds the record for Earth's highest reliably recorded temperature, while sitting just 135 kilometers from Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the contiguous United States. In July, you could fry eggs on the rocks of Badwater Basin, the lowest point in North America, then drive 2 hours and need winter gear for Whitney's summit. This proximity of extremes defines California's geography, where climatic zones compress like accordion folds. Death Valley's heat comes from its depth. Air heats as it descends below sea level, compressed like an atmospheric pressure cooker. The valley acts as a natural oven, surrounded by mountains that trap hot air. Meanwhile, Whitney rises to where air thins and cools, where snow lingers into summer. Rangers tell stories of rescuing hikers suffering from both heat stroke and altitude sickness on the same day, just in different locations. The two extremes are visible from each other on clear days, the lowest point contemplating the highest, a conversation between opposites conducted in silence across the Mojave Desert's expanse. Bangladesh squeezes more humans into its territory than Russia, despite being 115 times smaller, a density that defies comprehension. Picture Russia's entire population compressed into an area the size of Iowa, and you begin to understand Bangladesh's reality. 1,265 people inhabit each square kilometer, compared to Russia's 9 lonely souls per square kilometer. This density exists on land that floods annually, in a river delta barely above sea level, in Cyclone Alley, where storms regularly kill thousands. Yet people don't just survive here, they thrive, creating one of the world's most vibrant cultures in one of its most challenging geographies. The countryside, which might be empty in other nations, teems with villages so closely spaced they nearly touch. Even rice fields serve double duty, farming fish in the same flooded paddies that grow grain. Every piece of land serves multiple purposes. Roads become markets, rooftops become gardens, rivers become highways. This is human adaptation pushed to its limit, proof that density doesn't determine destiny. The Danube River flows through more capital cities than any other river on Earth, a liquid highway connecting Vienna, Bratislava, Budapest, and Belgrade. No other river can claim such political importance, flowing through the hearts of power across 2,850 kilometers. The river has watched empires rise and fall along its banks, carried Viking longships and Ottoman armies, Nazi patrol boats, and Soviet cargo barges. Today, it connects 10 countries, more than any other river, requiring international cooperation just to manage its waters. Each capital presents a different face to the same river: Vienna's refined promenades, Budapest's dramatic parliament, Belgrade's war-scarred fortress. The river doesn't care about the borders it crosses, flowing from the Black Forest to the Black Sea with geological indifference to human politics. Cargo ships navigate from Germany to the Black Sea entirely on river water, making the Danube a maritime highway through the center of a continent. The river that once divided empires now unites Europe, though the water flowing past each capital carries the pollution of all upstream neighbors. As we reach the end of tonight's journey through Earth's beautiful contradictions, we find ourselves changed by the geography of impossibility. We've wandered across a planet that refuses to make sense, that insists on defying every rule we try to impose upon it. From seas that aren't seas to countries within countries, from lakes that burn to islands that exist only part-time, our world reveals itself as a master of geographic irony, a patient artist working in stone and water and time. These 100 facts barely scratch the surface of Earth's strangeness. For every impossible place we've visited tonight, 1,000 others wait in the shadows of our knowledge, unmarked on maps, unnamed in atlases. Geography, we've learned, is less about fixed locations and more about ongoing negotiations between land and sea, between ice and fire, between human ambition and planetary indifference. Perhaps what makes no sense is our expectation that geography should follow rules we understand. We draw straight lines across curved surfaces, impose permanent borders on shifting sands, name unchanging places in a world that never stops changing. The planet continues its patient work beneath our feet, splitting continents, building islands, filling lakes, emptying seas, all while we sleep above its restless surface. The Caspian Sea will continue being a lake that we call a sea. Point Roberts will wake tomorrow still separated from its nation by another nation. The Amazon will flow another day without bridges. The Sahara will receive snow on its peaks, and somewhere, lightning will strike Lake Maracaibo while Venice sinks another millimeter into its lagoon. These places exist whether we understand them or not. They persist in their beautiful impossibility, indifferent to our confusion, continuing their ancient patterns and modern changes with the same steady patience. The Dead Sea will drop lower tomorrow. Iceland will grow a little wider. Another island might emerge from the ocean, or another sea might begin its transformation into desert. What we've discovered tonight is that Earth operates on its own logic. one written before human memory and continuing long after we're gone. The planet keeps its own counsel, makes its own rules, breaks them when it chooses. Geography is not a fixed science, but an ongoing story, each chapter written in volcanic ink and glacial patience, in tectonic arguments and atmospheric whims. Thank you for joining me in celebrating Earth's magnificent absurdities, for walking through this museum of geographic impossibilities. As you drift towards sleep, may your dreams carry you to these impossible places that exist, to borders that shouldn't be, and waters that flow the wrong way, to islands that vanish with the tides, and caves that have never known sunlight. Dream of pink lakes and burning craters. Dream of underground cities and underwater rivers. Dream of mountains that walk and deserts that flood. Let your sleeping mind wander to the loneliest islands and the most crowded valleys, to the highest cities and the deepest caves. These places are all real, all waiting, all continuing their existence while you rest. And remember, somewhere on this planet, right now, as you close your eyes, geography is breaking its own rules. Somewhere, the impossible is simply Tuesday's normal weather. Somewhere, people are living in places that shouldn't exist, thriving in conditions that defy logic, calling impossible places home. The Earth will continue its contradictions through the night. The tides will rise and fall, revealing and hiding islands. The continents will drift their imperceptible distances. New land will be born from volcanoes, while old land disappears beneath waves. And tomorrow, the sun will rise on a planet that makes no more sense than it did today. And that's precisely what makes it wonderful. Sleep well, fellow traveler. And remember, you live on a planet so strange that if it didn't exist, no one would believe it possible. Until next time, this has been Midnight Geography, reminding you that the world's most impossible places are all perfectly real, waiting patiently for someone to discover their impossibility. Good night.